Hi everyone, and welcome to Consulus WorldView, about building trust to shape resilient organizations. In 1995, I attended an international youth festival for a United World in Rome, called GenFest. That event changed my life. I learned from personal experiences of other young people on how it is possible to build trust and unity even during wars, sectarian violence, and in the face of injustice. In 2018, the organizers of GenFest invited me to speak to young people who had come from all over the world. This time they asked me to share how to build a united world in the economy. Remembering how GenFest changed my life, I shared that the three greatest obstacles to progress in an inclusive economy are the poverty of trust, poverty of good institutions, and the poverty of solutions capable of realizing positive change. And if we truly want to shape a united world, we need a new generation of leaders who know how to build trust, leaders who can transform institutions for good, and leaders who will follow through on their ideas despite difficulties. The poverty of trust that we see in the world today is a rather curious paradox. We are an interconnected community, a globalized world due to advances in technology. But we are seeing rising divisions among people, organizations, and institutions, as people struggle to trust each other, companies, or governments. This issue is an urgent one, as trust is the foundation for positive human relationships, enabling us to communicate, collaborate, and cooperate towards common goals. Without trust, insecurity and hidden intentions prevent us from making sound judgments and creating holistic solutions, and all other efforts to bring people together for the common good will crumble. This is obvious during this global pandemic. The poverty of trust is so prevalent and felt, but it is rarely talked about, and even fewer concrete solutions to address it. What is clear is that organizations and countries with a high degree of trust were better at navigating this pandemic. So today's worldview will focus on the different perspectives on building trust to shape resilient organizations in the following ways. First, why is trust important? How does trust impact an organization? How can we measure or assess the levels of trust in these organizations? What can leaders do to build trust? And what are some of the practices that organizations can do to ensure that it is an environment that's safe to allow innovation and growth? To shed a little light on this issue, we launched a global survey to get a better understanding on the current levels of trust in organizations and how that impacts employee engagement and organizational growth. Let's take a look at some of the results. Our global survey found that trust is fundamental to performance in organizations. But why is trust so important, and what are some of the barriers to building trust? To dive deeper into some of these questions, we had conversations with some leaders to hear from their experiences. We will first listen to Tom VanOsdol, CEO of Ascension, Florida, in the United States.
Hey Tom, thanks for joining us today. The idea of building trust in organizations is so commonly talked about. From your personal experience, to what extent would you say that this is a priority for organizations globally?
I think it's absolutely paramount. I mean, it goes to the foundational culture of the organization, which then, from my experience and perspective, has everything to do with the organization's ability to execute on its strategic objectives and accomplish its goals, as well as develop and grow and flourish individuals serving inside the organization. So I think it's absolutely paramount to organizational success and ultimately survival. It's paramount from the standpoint of alignment of purpose, alignment of engagement, alignment of incentives, alignment of the work being done by individuals in the organization, so everybody understands not only where we're going and what we're aiming toward, but that everybody is all in and aiming toward the same objectives. Trust also goes to the ability to maintain that alignment when the organization is under pressure, when there are external competitive pressures or regulatory pressures or whatever they may be, or just pressures from within with folks pushing back, asking why, wanting to understand the direction of the organization. If leaders like myself, I need to be able to trust that the next layer and the next layer of leaders throughout the organization understand the objectives, that they feel as though they are engaged and included, and that they have had their questions answered, such that when they get pushed on why from the associates with whom they serve, that they can deliver the message consistently and not undermine or backpedal on the objectives of the organization. And all that's the ability of the organization and the leaders to trust one another. It also is very much underpinned on the necessity of psychological safety, which psychological safety and trust within the organization are absolutely hand in glove. If it's not a psychologically safe environment and culture, you're not going to be able to build trust in the organization. Therefore, again, that will undermine the ability of the organization to execute on its objectives. And the other reason why trust is so important in organizations is that, to the extent that trust exists, the organization's risk tolerance and risk acceptance increases, and therefore they're willing to take calculated risks and chances that have the opportunity then to leapfrog the performance of the organization forward. Whereas organizations in which trust doesn't exist, they are tremendously risk averse and won't, in many cases, take advantage of opportunities that are available to them.
With trust, as you mentioned, so paramount to every organization, why do you think leaders, who I'm sure recognize this need for trust, fail to build trust? And what else do you think could be done in such situations to really help build trust within the organization?
Well, organizations and individuals are under all types of pressures, personally, competitively, from a regulatory perspective, from just pressures in the job market and the overall macroeconomics of the job market, et cetera. So that sort of pressure is always resident, always pressing in on the organization and emanating from within the organization. And so again, those can be natural barriers to building trust, just to the extent that those things exist. Which again is why it's so critically important that leaders recognize this isn't, the team's not just going to develop trust just because we all get in a room and assume that it's there. There needs to be a very purposeful, intentional effort to create and build trust through, starting through things like exercises where the team gets to know one another better, the Myers-Briggs, the Enneagram, those types of exercises that help help folks not pigeonhole one another, but rather simply better understand perspectives that folks have, lenses through which they sort of view the world and the work, and their tendencies, where their natural strengths and tendencies are. And that then helps, when we're in a heated debate or conversation about a strategic initiative or, analytics, et cetera. If I have a better understanding of how this person sort of thinks and views problem solving, then I can work to frame the way that I'm engaging in a way that has the best opportunity to sort of create alignment with that individual. And all those things then are founded in this sort of foundation of working to build trust and get to know one another better.
Tom talked about the need for purposeful and intentional efforts to nurture trust. Let us dive deeper into the methods to build and embed trust for the growth of organizations. Designing an organization of trust is anchored on three main components: leaders, structures, and cultures. Building trust needs to start at the top. The best leaders understand that most important job for them is to be holistic in leadership, to build and inspire an environment that enables trust. Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella notably said, "The number one thing that you have to do as leader is to bolster confidence of the people you lead." In our global work in leadership transformation, we have discovered what are the fundamental characteristics of a leader capable of building high levels of trust to shape resilient teams. We define this as the holistic leadership model, which is also known as the HERO model. Here it is.
We need a different type of leadership now and in the future because of the more complex world we live in. We need leaders who can pivot, who can adjust, adapt quickly, and lead transformative change. Today's leaders must be integrated and holistic to be able to see the big picture, inspire people to work together, provide thought leadership and guidance along the way. Most leadership models are all about doing things, crafting a vision, communicating, directing, and achieving outcomes. Ways that the holistic leadership model sets leaders apart from those who are not prepared for the future is mainly that it is not just about doing, but it is also about being. It's about who the leader is as a person and how he or she shows up. It's about how and why people are motivated to follow this leader, to be engaged in the vision, and to trust that what they are being led to is good. The holistic leader is aware of and considers the conditions and the world around them, which will impact people and work. And most of all, the holistic leader considers that workers are human beings that also bring their whole selves to work, not just their skills and abilities, and they will be personally impacted by the decisions the leader makes. In other words, holistic leaders are person-centered. We have built these notions into a new leadership competency model for the future, which we call HERO, because the acronym HERO stands for the 4 competency categories of the holistic leader. Heart and spirit are about one's personal virtues, values, and character strengths, which inform decisions and actions the leader undertakes. Embracive thinking is about the mental capacity and capability to learn, think creatively, embrace diversity of thought, and apply one's knowledge in the decisions the leader makes. Relational dynamics is about one's physical presence, habits, and emotions. It's about how the leader relates to others and how aware he or she is of self and others. And finally, operations leadership is what all leaders need to deliver outcomes. So it's about the functional leadership capabilities of creating a vision, developing followership, planning, directing, and achieving results. Holistic leaders recognize that people, as well as leaders, are multifaceted by nature. They know how to integrate their character and values into their leadership, and they understand that they bring their whole selves, body, mind, and spirit to their leadership role. Recognizing this fact changes the way they lead, how their teams experience their leadership, and perhaps most notably, how they drive meaningful outcomes with purpose, even in times of great crisis and disruption.
Holistic leadership is crucial, especially when you're leading your organization in times of great uncertainty and crisis. Let's now listen to Ivan Gadze, CEO of Tokić, the largest car spare parts retail chain in Croatia.
Talking about leadership in uncertain times, we cannot avoid the topic of COVID-19 pandemic. We know that it was challenging for many companies, especially so in Croatia. What do you think a leader should keep in mind to be inclusive and embracive, especially in this period of uncertainty brought about by COVID-19?
Tough question. Okay, this is the situation that we've never had so far. You know, it's the really complete change of the game for all of us. I remember when the COVID crisis started. This was spring 2020. It was really very demanding, very tough year for us. It was really a lot of, let's say, setbacks or really several situations. If you remember very well, the COVID situation started, the lockdown in Croatia started on March 19th. We had an earthquake on March 22nd. Just a month earlier, we had a cyber attack. We were attacked. Our money was stolen from our company. It was a huge loss for us. And we were just at the time of filing our to antitrust agency in Slovenia, our greatest acquisition in our history here in Slovenia. So in really in like a month time, we had like 4 situations that we were not prepared for such situation. It really came one by one in a month. I remember that the most important thing that we decided that time was that we are going to be fully transparent to all of our employees. You know, we really very openly told them that what is the situation and what are the ways, how do we see how we can fight together. At that time, we made a really very tough decision in March 2020. For the first time in history of our company, we decided to reduce the salaries for 20%. That was a huge shock for all of our employees. But on the other side, I remember very well, it was a big Zoom meeting with almost all of our employees on the meeting. And I was telling them the whole situation, and I was telling them we have 24 hours. So I want you that you reply back to my email. We didn't have any legal requests that we should, by law, we could easily reduce the salary because of the situation in the company. But I asked them, give me your consent or give me your comment on how do you see this situation in the company. At that time, so in Tokić, we had 611 employees. And this was Thursday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So the Zoom call finished at 4 o'clock. And by 9 o'clock in the morning, I had 610 out of 611 emails confirming consent, giving the support to the management decision, being aware that the decision is to reduce the salary. So it was really a joint sacrifice of the whole company. So could you imagine what is now the responsibility of being the leader of that company, of that group of the people, that you have to do your best. You don't ask for anything. You're really trying to find a way how to combat, how to compete, how to fight, how to survive. Why I'm saying this? Because at that time, during this call, I told them, like, please be aware that not all of our management decisions will be elegant and easy. However, we have to make certain decisions because we don't see the other way how we could survive as a company. And we are talking about one of the best companies in Croatia. Just a few months before that, we received the Future Shaper Award from London Stock Exchange Group. So we are really at the peak of our performance. You know, we made this big investment in Slovenia. You know, all of a sudden everything stopped. However, again, having such a huge human capital in our company, we found a way out. Today we are talking about this as a history, you know. So I think that it's not the matter of the price. You are not transparent if you are communicating transparently only during the good times. You are transparent when you're communicating during the hard times as well.
If you're a leader having to navigate daily uncertainties, Try applying the HERO model in your daily interactions with your co-workers to inspire and build trust. This is critical as organizations seek to emerge from the pandemic to rebuild new operating models more suited to our times. This will mean a more resilient organization, one that is less breakable. To do this, trust is certainly needed. Being a holistic leader does not guarantee that a culture of trust is nurtured throughout the organization. In fact, more intentional efforts are required to inspire and embed trust into all levels of the organization. This is crucial because trust cannot be seen as a consequence of team-building activities or company dinners alone. These once-a-year relationship-building affairs have very little influence on building authentic trust within an organization. Rather, trust needs to be seen as a core structural element of an organization, a core principle on which businesses and organizations are designed on. In seeking to understand the impact of trust on shaping resilient cultures for innovation and growth, we spent the last 5 years studying its data. We call this study of trust Unity 4.0, and we'd like to share what we have learned about the impact of trust on innovation.
Think of your organization as a family. Without trust, a family would not be able to nurture growth. Similarly, in every organization, it is crucial to ensure that trust is fueling effective interactions and propelling change and growth at every level of the organization. It is thus crucial that organizations can get a realistic assessment of the current levels of trust so that they can identify gaps that are limiting their growth. You might now be thinking about how can something so abstract and intangible like trust be tracked or assessed? Well, this was the question we asked ourselves years ago, and we found a way for levels of trust and organizational unity to be systematically measured through looking at the design of the business, depth of interactions, and eventually experiences created within and outside of the organizational structure. Through conducting comprehensive employee surveys on all areas of the organization, from business model to organizational design to brand experience, we have seen that there are 4 types of organizations. Band 0, zero trust. They have talent, capabilities, and resources, but most of them are working in silos as there is no effective process or platform for all the above to work together. The organization is close to a breakdown in operations. Band 1, transactional trust. The predominant conversations in the team are only about tasks and getting things done. There is no reciprocal concern or awareness of each other's state of life. Even though they have talent, capabilities, and resources, only some are working together as part of the workflow. Band 2, transformative trust. The conversations have an awareness of beliefs and abilities, meaning that you can count on colleagues to go through thick and thin to bring about change. They have talent, capabilities, and resources. There are processes and systems in place to actively unify them to generate innovation and growth, to shape unique products for the market. Band 3, transfigurative trust. At the highest level of trust is what we call transfigurative. It is a level where everyone has confidence both in the purpose of the organization and the abilities of each other to change the world. They have talent, capabilities, and resources maximized for impact. They have effective and uniquely designed processes and systems that actively bring them together to generate innovation, to create business breakthroughs, and lead the industry. One example, given the recent comments by former employees of Blue Origin about toxic culture, we can observe that it is a culture operating at Band 1 or less. In comparison, where SpaceX has repeatedly continued to deliver on the successes needed in such a complex sector like space, with growing confidence among the partners like NASA, after SpaceX successfully launched 4 civilians into space. You will conclude that as a consequence, SpaceX is at Band 3. Any organization without a meaningful purpose and a structure designed for unity of actions cannot, in any conceivable way, create and implement ideas that shape the future.
To hear more about the benefits of conducting a trust study, let's go to a dialogue with Stephen Raj, Chairman of Charis, Singapore, a non-profit humanitarian aid organization here.
Hi, Stephen. Thanks for joining us today. The Unity 4.0 Trust Study. was used to facilitate your board workshop. What was your first thoughts when you were presented with the Unity 4.0 result for Charis? In what way was the result useful to help Charis trust and unity?
Firstly, the framework was extremely useful, right? To get us thinking on a common page or a common structure, right? In terms of collecting thoughts, opinions, so that we can plan for the future. I think the results themselves specifically, gave us a good indication of what is the common opinion across board and staff. Again, there were slight nuances between what the staff thought and perhaps what the board thought. So it brings us, even closer in unifying between board and staff, which is always a constant challenge that we have, especially in nonprofits, right, where we have staff who may not perhaps be paid commercial salaries, and a lot of them do it for the passion of, or perhaps their own ideals of how they think certain things should be done. That's why they work for us. So it was interesting, from the results to get a validation of how they were thinking, and then from the board perspective as well. We've got board members who are quite varied in their professions, right? Everyone from lawyers to doctors to people who do full-time jobs in social service organizations, and people from technology. So it's quite varied in terms of our backgrounds. And I think this common framework, right, gave me, I guess, as the chairman of Charis and our broader exco in Charis as well, a glimpse into how our board members were thinking, right, given their diverse backgrounds and perhaps the committees that they were chairing as well, in terms of what they thought about the overall Charis. So it was interesting findings. I think there were some commonalities across everyone's thinking, but in certain aspects, there were also quite diverse views, right, depending on which angle you come from or what is your background or even your role within Charis. So it was good to look at the results, consider the diversity and try to find strength in that diversity as well. So yeah, so it definitely unified us. It definitely helped to, also build more trust with even between the board and the staff as well, because I think we were very clear that we valued the staff's inputs as the board sets a strategic direction, how to move forward. And that gave the staff a good sense of that it is a kind of a co-formulation or a co-creation between board and staff for the future of Charis, right? It definitely fortified the trust between us. I think even among the board members, it kind of brought, a new level of unity and trust as well among the board members. And of course, arising from the results of, what came out, our next step, of course, is then to say, in a broader ecosystem of our key partners, beneficiaries, stakeholders, how do we further improve unity and trust, in those aspects, right? Because to some degree, those people were not involved in the strategy workshops that Consulus, facilitated for us. So now with the thinking, with the frameworks, I think we also have some guidance on how we should be engaging them so that we similarly extend the benefits to them as well.
Organizational trust assessments like our Unity 4.0 study helps organizations review, get the realistic assessment on their capability to innovate, and identify areas to make changes on, to enable them to better adapt to customer needs and business climate, to act as one and create value in an age of disruption. Now, being holistic in your leadership and building organizational structures of trust are two key components. The last element, and arguably the most challenging component, is establishing a culture of trust. This requires time and intentional effort to ensure people in your organization are actively building person-centered understanding. Yona will now share more about practical solutions of building trust to shape resilient cultures. Over to you, Yona, in Greece.
Thanks, Lawrence. Now, most leaders will agree that trust is important. Why then is there such a lack of focus on building cultures of trust? Because only the best leaders understand the economic consequences of lack of trust in an organization. Think about it this way. When trust is low in the workplace, it places a hidden tax at every transaction. And by tax, we mean that both the cost and time for everything, for communication, for interaction, strategy, decision, escalate for things to get done. By contrast, individuals and organizations that have earned and operate with high trust experience the opposite of a tax, a dividend, A dividend that is like a performance multiplier, enabling them to succeed in their communications, their interactions, decisions, and to move with incredible speed. In fact, a recent Watson Wyatt study showed that high trust companies outperform low trust companies by nearly 300%. Trust needs to be built intentionally and explicitly by leaders for organizations to reap trust dividends. Let's hear again from Tom.
As a leader, being explicit about expecting a culture of psychological safety, inviting a culture of psychological safety, which means that I, as a leader, have to say to my team, I want to hear exactly what's on your mind. You know, we hire really intelligent, gifted individuals into this organization, and the last thing in the world I want you to do is sit there silent in meetings, especially if you're sitting there silent because you're fearful or uncertain about how what you have to say might be received, right? So it's really got to start with a very fundamental, I want to hear the contrarian view. I welcome you asking why. I welcome you pushing back on the direction that I'm communicating, because I know if you're doing that, you're not doing it to irritate me. You're doing it simply because you want the organization to make the very best decision and move forward in the way that's going to maximally benefit the organization. And perhaps when you ask, if I communicate a direction and you ask why, or you say, I think you're missing something, or I don't understand, that conversation that we then engage may inform me. Maybe there is something that I'm missing. Maybe there is a better way. Maybe there is a nuance based on the conversation that we have that will create a better direction for the organization and help us, again, better achieve our goals, which is really all that we should care about at the end of the day. But none of that can happen if I'm not saying, I want to hear what's on your mind. I want you to ask why. I want you to push back. I want you to debate among one another. That's healthy. That's a sign of a healthy, vibrant, trustful culture. And those kinds of cultures can achieve wonderful, wonderful results. And then not only communicating that that's the expectation, but reinforcing it when it happens. That's one of the absolute keys to building trust is, you say you want to hear from us. You say it's okay to ask why or push back. What happens the first time somebody does it? That is the litmus test. And what I've always told my folks they will hear, and what I've endeavored to do is that if someone says, Tom, I think you're missing something, or I just don't quite understand, could you explain it again? Or gosh, I think there may be a different way to view it. The first thing they need to hear from me is thank you. Thank you for trusting me and trusting the culture that we're developing enough to speak up and speak your mind and ask why or push back. Thank you for doing that. Now let's have an honest discussion about your concern, your point of view, et cetera. And then let's reconcile that. Either you convince me and that I need to go another direction. You and I create a hybrid of what I was thinking and what you're thinking, and then that becomes the direction. Or I hear you and I answer your questions and we continue down the track that I was communicating. But even when we do that, first of all, it just affirms for me my thinking and that we're on the right track. And second of all, you as a leader feel heard and you feel trusted and respected and valued, and you've got your questions answered. So now you're ready to go and maximally push on the wheel and help the organization achieve its goals. So those are a few things that just have to be repeatedly played out: an expectation of psychological safety and building trust, and then a reinforcement when those crucial moments happen, when somebody does speak up or raise their hand, that they are not reprimanded or shut down, but in fact thanked and listened to and heard in the conversation.
To help you kickstart your journey to building cultures of trust in your organization, I would like to share with you 2 such practices of designed organizational trust building that we ourselves practice at Consulus.
Consulus Circle is a weekly sharing session as a safe space designed to facilitate reflections and deepen mutual understanding. The management was briefed not to cast judgment, so as to allow a free flow of sharing. The practice was started in 2004 as a means to gauge the state of the organization and how it is growing, but also the level of unity on the ground. It started simply as "What did you learn about the week?" and "How are you?" Based on an internal concept of the firm called the garden theory, it is an idea that an ecosystem flourishes when individuals are allowed to flourish. So it is critical to sense how each other's personal life is moving along. Are we all being intentional and purposeful? To sense the interrelationships, are we working together, prioritizing actions of unity before personal feelings or siloed thinking? To sense the depth of honesty and sincerity, are we being honest about the challenges and conflicts that we face? During each circle session, everyone, regardless of seniority, department, and even country, comes together as equals to speak freely and honestly about things that are on their minds. These sessions have been an effective way to remove barriers, allowing quicker integration of new people from diverse cultures. This practice of group reflections and sharings not only nurtures genuine connection and care for each other, but also enhances organizational learning and growth. Through these sessions, leaders in the organization also get a realistic picture of the characters, capabilities, and challenges of each person and of the collective organization.
Intentionally designing trust building in organization involves investing time and prioritizing the creation of a safe environment for authentic relationships to develop. This is a cornerstone to building trust and the sense of mutual dependency for successful, high-performing working relationships.
Bonsai is a once-a-year affair where everyone in the organization who has worked with each other is required to nurture or prune each other. As growth is interdependent, we need a dedicated moment where we can give each other feedback on how that person's way of growing has impacted me for good or negatively. Giving feedback on areas of improvement and affirmations on areas of strengths provides an integrative view of interpersonal development. The practice is simple, yet challenging to do, requiring deep reflections on each other's strengths and possible improvements objectively. Not to criticize or find faults, but to help each other grow through enhancing one's strengths and minimizing gaps. Participants are not allowed to comment on the spot, but to consider intentionally, write it down before sharing what is written. This is to prevent misspeak, which can hurt if it is given without care for the other. Just like caring for and maintaining a bonsai tree, pruning is performed in an intentional manner that strengthens and enhances the tree. Balance is maintained. Pruning too much or too often can weaken or even kill the tree.
Today, in our Overdue program, we talked about how to overcome the poverty of trust in our environments. We shared with you the hero holistic leadership model that outlines the competencies a leader of trust needs to have today. We shared how trust can be embedded in all levels of the organization and how it can be measured for innovation and growth. We shared with you 2 practices as examples of how you could build cultures of trust within your organization intentionally, but yet authentically. Trust cannot be built overnight, and trust building is by design. If you are seeing a growing poverty of trust in your organization, I invite you to take action now. Put these thoughts into action. Be that activist of trust to change your environment for good. There are many ways to do so. Start with the easiest, the feasible ones, and steadily get the buy-in of others. Back to you, Lawrence, in Singapore.
Thank you, Yona. Thank you for staying with us in this episode of Consulus WorldView on building trust to shape resilient organizations by design. We hope that by bringing to you insights into the systemic issues around trust that we are all facing today, you have been equipped with a new perspective. And that the tools that we have shared with you today have inspired solutions for your own organization to build a high level of trust. We believe that if you are a purposeful company with structures designed for unity, you'll be able to innovate and grow and emerge more resilient to navigate the changes ahead and harness the opportunities of the future. May you shape a better economy by design.